So, welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight, and today I have a new guest. Tai Spring is here, and he is a seer. And we will talk about, among other things, what 2025. Yeah, it is
Yeah,
2025.
I was gonna make that. I'm like, wait, 2024 now, 2025.
Yeah, what that has in store for us and beyond. So, Tai, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me on. You
Yeah,
want me to just start going on some stuff, or you have specific questions?
Yeah, why don't we start so that we get to know you a little bit?
Okay, yeah.
How and when did you notice that you get, I don't know, do you have visions or does it just come to you in other forms? So how did that start? When did you notice it? And what impact did that have on you?
Yeah, so I've always been kind of I was a very strange kid. I was one of those kids that didn't talk to people. Like I would literally like walk up to the teacher and like preschool and like whisper in her ear so that other students wouldn't hear my voice because I was just so introverted. And people have been shocked that I even make YouTube videos these days just because of how different I was back then. But I was always very kind of just like in my own world. And so I didn't really have, visions or anything like that, like way back. But I was just very sensitive to energy. You could say like an empath. And so I was just very, very artistic, very into art and using that side of my brain, I think that's the right side of your brain, very creative. And I would just kind of tune into things kind of energetically, and I'd always feel like I was almost communicating with like, as a kid you view it as like monsters or something like that, but not in a bad way. It was like there's just something there kind of feeling. And I would play with the idea of manifestation before I knew that the term manifestation. I could just kind of feel like I could kind of like make things happen with my mind on some level, or just kind of like use my intention. It was just something that was natural to me. And then that led into interests in like occult philosophies and just, all that stuff, especially as a teenager. I got into Carlos Castaneda and things like that. And that really kind of inspired me to tune more into these types of just subtle intuitions, I guess you could say. And as I did that more, I started to have experiences where I would just, feel like one of the earliest ones was I was trying to do it on purpose. I was meditating and I was trying to feel what's around me. And I got chocolate and I walk out of my bedroom and my mom's there and I'm like, was somebody just eating chocolate? And she was like, yeah, I was just eating chocolate ice cream. And I was like, I knew it. And I didn't say anything. I didn't explain myself. But just like, yeah, I thought I could smell it, because I wasn't trying to sound crazy, you know. And from there it was just something that I developed until I decided to take classes to help me develop this more. I went to a place no longer around called Portland Psychic School in Portland, Oregon. And then I went to another place called Art of the Seer. And these are just places where they help you meditate and they help you just kind of like a gym coach in a way where they're just there to kind of inspire you and keep you practicing, keep you pushing the weights up and down like a gym coach would, and guiding you a little bit. And so from there I started doing readings, um, practicing doing readings with classmates, and that led to doing readings very, very quickly in those trainings on people coming in from outside of the school that we didn't know. And I quickly realized that I can do this. And it was fun. And I just started doing it for fun at first. And then eventually people told me, you could charge money for this. And I was like, well, yeah, that kind of validates me too, more as a person, gives me the validation, the recognition, and makes me take myself more seriously, because otherwise you kind of start to feel like you're just draining yourself out, pouring your heart out for everyone all the time, and that can be exhausting and not really psychologically healthy too. Um, and so I started doing that part time, and it's become more and more of a full time thing. I recently had a job. I was working part time in a kitchen, and that shut down recently due to the economy, which is funny because I predicted that 2024 would be a rough year economically, and that was the year that the place I was working at shut down. And since then, I've just been floating along, hoping that I can not have to go back to getting another part-time job and just do this full time. For the moment, I'm floating along, so it's been pretty cool. So that's
Yeah.
that's I guess my story. And
Yeah.
how did it affect me? Well, I mean, it was kind of something I actually kind of expected, and it happened so slowly. It was always kind of my personality to be into like weird stuff anyway, so it wasn't like I just went to sleep and woke up and I could see auras or anything like that, like some people talk about it. It was never anything dramatic like that for me.
Hmm. Okay. So, yeah, it sounds as if, you were pushed into this direction, especially when the restaurant shut down.
Yeah, well, I was already in that. I was doing it for like since 2020 is when I started publicly going out and, advertising myself as a psychic, which always feels weird at first. Still feels a little weird, but, I've gotten pretty used to it for the most part now. So,
Hmm. Okay. So, do you sometimes use, yeah, tools like, let's say, astrology, tarot cards, or things like that? Or is it just you and your client?
um, I do enjoy playing around with tarot cards and I enjoy astrology, but I am not good at either of those. I don't know what's going on astrologically until I go on YouTube and click on an astrologer to see what they're saying. And tarot cards, honestly, I haven't even memorized them, so like, I just use like things on online where they kind of tell me what the cards mean. So I don't use those personally, except for fun on my own sometimes. But when I'm doing a reading, the way that I do it is I will usually meditate for, I don't know, a good half hour, maybe 45 minutes before I know I have a client, hopefully around there. I used to do it for an hour. Now it just kind of depends on how I'm feeling. And what I do is I just close my eyes and I kind of set the intention of what it is that I'm going to read, what I'm going to tune into. And I just start to see symbolic representations usually. It's not usually expected to be like literally what's happening. It's more of a symbolic representation. And, even with remote viewing, I just recently took a remote viewing class, and I thought that remote viewing was where you just kind of see it exactly as it is. But one of the things that my remote viewing teacher told me was remote viewing is not actually remote viewing, and that it's actually more about just getting subtle hints of different things. And I was like, you know what? That's funny because that's what I already do. But so it's basically remote viewing, sort of, except I don't have the strict protocol where you do step A, step B, step C, et cetera, et cetera. Remote viewing is very structured. Whereas what I do is I just kind of tune in and just kind of whatever shows up, shows up. Sometimes I tune into just like the general energy, the general vibe. Like, does this person feel grounded? I usually start off with simple things like that. There's also different layers of the auric field, and I've been trained in my classes to kind of tune into those. So I will kind of do that as a default sometimes if I'm not having something pop up right away. Just be like, what's going on in these different layers of the aura and just kind of tune into them. And whatever picture shows up, I sometimes I interpret it and explain it. Sometimes I explain the picture. Sometimes I just see rapid fire, like a bunch of pictures, and they all kind of symbolize something, and they're all kind of coming together to paint a bigger picture about what it all means. And I usually won't describe the pictures. I'll just describe the sense, the my interpretation of them,
Mm.
and just the vibe, the feelings that I get. Yeah, just the energy, the just like a inner knowingness sometimes. Along with these images will come a sense of knowing sometimes. Like sometimes I'll see the same image, but it will mean completely different things. And I'll just kind of know that. Just somehow I just kind of understand the context, I guess you could say is different.
Is there a predominant subject that your clients, can you say that your clients would like to know about?
Well, there's always crypto.
Yeah, okay.
Everybody always wants to know about crypto. That's a common one, but that's more like I do like written readings and I do live 1 hour sessions and 1 hour sessions that may come up, but they're usually about just all sorts of things. They can be about relationships. They can be about their own personal growth. Actually, that's usually. I mean, I have answers for all sorts of things, but I feel like the biggest effect that I have on people is more of an energetic effect that has to do with their own spiritual development. And you know, I guess one thing that's a little different about the way I do readings and other people do readings is other people kind of wait for you to ask a question, which I do that too, but usually the first half of the reading, I do what's called a cold reading, meaning I just say whatever's coming up and just kind of describe. I feel like it's kind of like therapeutic in a sense. It's not necessarily going for like this is the answer to your problems, like question answer. It's more like kind of a therapeutic, like getting to know yourself in the way that you would go to a counselor and talk about yourself. Talking about yourself kind of brings things up and kind of helps you clear through energy. And so that's kind of what I'm doing, but I'm doing the talking instead of the other person. So I do
Yeah.
that. And so that brings up all sorts of things. Usually just whatever, you know, dominant stuck energies are there and kind of what they can do to help clear through whatever it is that's holding them back in life. So,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
get a lot of questions about moving. Should I move here? Should I take this job? To is this relationship right for me? Usually by that point, it's usually to the point where they're thinking it might not be. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's the gist of it. Can be anything, but
yeah,
a
yeah.
wide range.
I wanted to know because I did tarot readings for yeah, I guess 2, 3 years, but
Yeah.
after a while, I was really, it was always, yeah, let's say 95% of the time, it was, is he coming back to me? Does he love me? Yeah,
Yeah. I get that a lot too.
when,
Yeah.
yeah, when will I find the right partner? I was
Mhm.
bored out of my skull.
Yeah. I don't like I mean, people ask me those questions. I try and steer people away from that type of question, it's just like there's free will involved too, and it's like part of the for me, part of the purpose of a future prediction is to be able to change the outcome, which means that the future prediction is not set in stone and the future is not set in stone. So, I can be like, yeah, from where things are at now, it seems like most likely around this time is when things could happen. But let me tell you what you can do to change that. I feel that that's far more valuable than just being like, 3 years from now, during December, you will meet your love. And it's just like, what's the point of that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
And with cards, of course, we do not only have tarot cards, we have Lenormand and all kinds of sets. What I find helpful is, you know, don't read the book first. Look at the card,
Mm,
all the cards, make your notes, meaning, what does this card tell me? What does it mean to me? And then once you have done that, you can compare.
yeah.
But you have a more personal approach to the cards in that sense, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I have tried that out a little bit. Every now and then when I'm stuck doing readings mostly on myself, because it's harder to do readings on yourself
That's
because you're
true.
not neutral to it. You have so much charged energies and preconceived ideas in your head. So sometimes I'll pull cards when I'm trying to do a reading on myself. So yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
try that strategy out more.
Yeah. And many times, when these questions came, like, yeah, is he coming back to me? That sort of thing. Um, what I noticed was many times I had an addiction subject on the table. Yeah.
Hmm.
And then I said, okay, I have here one card that talks about addiction. It can be a lot of things. It can be a workaholic, an alcoholic. It can be that he's dependent on other people, or he gives too much about other people's opinions, or he has a gambling addiction. And then
Hmm.
I usually said, you have to yeah, 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 you're right, he's an alcoholic. And
Interesting.
yeah, and then I said, usually, and what exactly do you expect from this relationship?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah.
And then after a while, yeah, they were not very happy that I didn't say everything will be fine, but some of
Yeah.
at least came to the realization maybe this is not the relationship I should pursue.
Yeah, I try to avoid telling people what they should or shouldn't do, and I just kind of,
Yeah.
that's not for me to decide. And some people
No.
they're in a challenging relationship because that's kind of their life path, and on some level, I feel
Hmm.
that sometimes we are meant to be in challenging situations for our spiritual development as well. So I don't think there's always a right or wrong answer to
No,
these situations.
definitely not. It's best if that person arrives on that conclusion. It's themselves,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
But there is also a little trap when you say some people are in difficult relationships because of their spiritual development. It can become a trap, meaning you are
Yeah,
in a very narcissistic, abusive relationship, but you are telling yourself, yeah, he's my twin flame, and
yeah,
these relationships are supposed to be difficult, and you wear yourself out sometimes for years and you are getting nowhere.
yeah, Yeah, I don't ever tell anyone that they should be in a bad relationship because
Yeah.
it's part of their spiritual contract or whatever. I never say that, you know. It's
Mm,
more just like a it's just something I'm aware of, so I try not to. I just kind of I like to give people a reflection of where they're at and they can do what they want with that basically,
mhm.
rather than saying you're in a bad relationship and you should leave, you know.
No, 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 no. But you can lead somebody, to think
Yeah.
for
I
themselves.
try to be neutral. I try and
Yeah.
describe when I say a positive, I try and balance it by saying a negative. If I say a negative, I try and balance it by saying a positive. Sometimes something is just clearly like not in alignment with someone too, and I'm not going to cover that up either, but I try to be neutral on
Yeah.
things as much as possible.
Mm. So there was one thing that I heard in one of your videos that you did on YouTube, and that is that our frequency has something to do with how much progress we are making.
Hmm.
And you talked
I'm
about,
trying to remember where I was saying that.
yeah, in that context, you talked about an alien species that would guide us
Oh.
and that would teach us that our frequency, our vibration has something to do with how fast can we develop or not. Do you remember that?
Well, I definitely talk a lot about there being a vibration coming to Earth
Mhm.
from well, ETs, as you said, as crazy as that sounds. And this being part of the development of Earth where we're heading, and this changing the frequency of everyone on Earth as well, because it's just like kind of channeling energy to us. And I feel that this is significant to what's been going on recently. Even the chaos, even the negative things are part of our development. And when positive, or sorry, when energy looks really positive, sometimes it can create negative situations in the 3D realm, which appear negative. They are negative. I'm not going to lie. It's not that they're positive. It's just that sometimes it's like the old energy has to crash and burn,
Mhm.
unfortunately, sometimes to clear. Ideally, people would be able to clear energy in a smooth manner, but sometimes people are not able to do that. And it's more of a, I'll put it like this. Sometimes you can clear energy and willingly evolve, move up in vibration is another way of saying that, relating to what you were pointing out. And you can do that willingly through meditation or through mindfulness, awareness of where you're at in your life and taking the right steps to get you where you want to be by kind of clearing out the blocks, clearing out the things that are holding you back in your life. That's the preferred method. The unpreferred method is where you don't do that and the universe does it for you. And that is usually a negative life event. Maybe you get hit by a car and you end up in the hospital, and now you're in a hospital bed and you really have to reanalyze your life and think about where you're at. And a lot of the times people will make significant changes to their life and it's a negative situation, but it's clearing a lot of things out of the way so that you can move on to the next level. Sometimes this is a negative situation on the 3D level, but a positive from the perspective of spirit of your own spirit, which is partially in your body, partially your consciousness, but the rest of your spirit that's not in your body. That that aspect of your spirit, sometimes people refer to that as the higher self, can actually willingly cause chaos and horrible things to happen. And so I feel that a lot of what's going on in the world, a lot of the chaos is partially due to the squeezing, so to speak, of this higher frequency, kind of like squeezing out the lower frequency. And by squeezing it out, it's not intentionally creating these negative situations, but it's also just like how the earth clears energy through creating volcanoes and earthquakes and things like that. And that's also happening more and more. Also for the same reason. It's all the same thing happening. And so 2025 is a big year heading we're heading into where I'm seeing this happening on significant levels. Um, I think it was November and December because I do monthly predictions every month before the month starts for the following month. And I think it was November and December. I kept seeing this like pivot point. It was like as if we're coming in as humanity at this frequency going at this angle, and then we hit this point and we're like pivoting and we're going back at a different angle. And that's, not to be taken too literally. It's just a symbolic metaphor to get the point across. So don't think too literally about that. But it was really like a pivot point um, heading into 2025 where things have been significantly shifting. And that was right before the drones, so to speak, started showing up, which I was also saying there's going to be a whole bunch of disclosure. Um, I wasn't I wasn't specifically saying it's going to be just ET disclosure, but like all sorts of things. I mean, we've been seeing the Puff Daddy thing develop, and I think there's going to be much more of that. I actually just saw recently, I think a couple days ago, I just saw in the news that there's another whistleblower who just came out and was saying he was working on UFO craft or something like that. Don't take my words too literally. I don't really remember the exact situation, but it was another whistleblower like the David Grush guy, but who had direct experience with these things. So I feel like that's taking it up another notch. Bro, I was kind of seeing that December would be a month of kind of taking a break from the truth coming out. And I believe that's because most of what came out in December about the drones was disinformation. And then I was saying that January is where we're going to start having more disclosure. And so that just recently happened, and it seems like people are starting to wake up more to those sorts of things. I guess we're halfway through the month, so we'll see what else happens. But yeah, I think this is all back to what you're trying to say, or what you're asking about. Yeah, I believe that there's a lot going on energetically, and these beings, these ET, are actually the ones that I am sensing are here now relating to the drones. In my perspective, the drones are government um, operations to track and monitor what's going on in the skies, which is the real ETs, and also to distract us from them so that we see the drones instead and go, oh, they're drones, not ETs. It's China. We need to attack China. you know. But I feel that these specific ones that are more so coming here are not the same ones that were influencing the vibration of the earth. I don't get into the whole identifying which species is which. I just that's not something I can do. But I do just sense that they are different groups, whatever groups they may be, I don't know. But their presence is kind of changing the vibration in a different sort of way. And I have been seeing when I did the 2025 prediction, I did see, and this was before the drones started showing up. by the way, before any of that was publicized, I was seeing like people that were glowing, and it kind of reminded me of like Jesus or something like that at first. And it was sometime around March or so, give or take, where it was as if these people were coming into society, and I felt like it would start in Europe somewhere. I'm kind of getting UK actually. And that's not what I was initially saying. That's just kind of showing up to me now as I'm saying it. But somewhere around Europe, maybe UK, um, where these beings start kind of integrating into society. And I don't, at first, I just thought they might be enlightened beings, like enlightened humans, which I think is the case. But human can also mean human genetics, but not necessarily from Earth, or maybe from inside of Earth, or something like that, or maybe interdimensional. Um, ETs, maybe the better term would be ED, extra dimensional, rather than extraterrestrial. I'm not sure, but they're definitely beings from somewhere else. I'll put it that way.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
I don't think we're gonna like know that they're intermingling with society, but I feel that they're going to have a massive influence on culture and kind of, I wouldn't call it a revolution in the sense of like a violent revolution, but more like a kind of spiritual awakening type of revolution was the sense that I was getting. And so I feel that there's just like this massive operation, if you want to call it that, involving the frequency and the consciousness of humanity since 2020. I'm sorry if I just keep going on. If you want me to stop and ask the question, that's fine.
No, no, go ahead.
Okay. But since 2020, I've been ever since I started making YouTube videos, or maybe it was like at the start of 2021. I don't know, somewhere around there. I started saying that I was seeing this timeline playing out where um, things are getting crazier, and we're starting to wake up energetically. 2020 was kind of the start of that. I mean, where does something truly begin and end is relative to perception, but from my perception, where it really kicked off was 2020. And where I see it ending is 2027. And when I first started seeing it, I was saying 2026. But now I include 2027 because I feel that there's a lot of integration in 2027. Um, but 2020,
Integration of what?
oh, okay. Integration of the cultural shifts that
Mm.
are taking place, kind of the exposing of a lot of truths. I mean, for example, not that long ago, a lot of the things that people are saying now would have been considered absolute like Looney Tunes crazy, just like, the puffy stuff, stuff like that. If you were to say that, like, I don't know, just 2019, people would probably laugh at you. I mean, the general public, things
Yeah.
like that. But now it's like a serious thing. People take that seriously, especially since the Me Too movement and all of that. Um, and so basically in 2020, people were, they're all saying that, the economy is going to crash. And I was saying, no, I think it's going to keep going until around 2024 and then start to improve in 2025. And, 2024 was it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, honestly. But people were talking about and still debating whether or not it was truly a recession or not in 2024. But I'm seeing the economy starting to do better, but lots of things. falling apart, such as the mainstream narrative, the a lot of truths coming out, a lot of the higher powers, those at the very top, those power structures crumbling. 2025 I describe as the labor pains. And then 2026 is kind of like the baby is being born in 2026. People are starting to see like what's coming, where this is leading. And then 2027 is kind of you get to take the baby home and you get to kind of integrate the new vibration, the new frequency that's coming to Earth. It's like it's like that new higher frequency is no longer destructive and it's creative because in order to create you have to destroy, like your garden. If you're gardening, you're gonna have to pull some weeds and then plant your seeds. um so that's kind of where we're at in 2025 is where we're really starting to pull the weeds. And we've been kind of building up to that since 2020, but I see 2025 being a big year of that. 2026 as well, but 2026 is kind of the in between stage of finishing pulling the weeds and starting to plant the seeds of the new consciousness of the new world, I guess you could say.
hmm That's
And
very
so, yeah.
interesting because that also goes along with, yeah, astrological events.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, because Pluto has already settled in Aquarius now. And the last time we had that, we had the French and the American Revolution.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the French Revolution was really bad because then shortly after that, we had the terror reign of Robespierre. But be that as it may, it is up to us how we play our cards. And um, this year in, let me think, I guess it is June. I think it's June. Uranus will settle in Gemini, and that is another outer planet. And the outer planets always are dealing with the collective consciousness.
Mm.
Um, the inner planets are more, with personal things. So, and Uranus in Gemini has a very disruptive energy to it, meaning a lot of things that really do not function anymore will crumble apart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes perfect sense with what I've been seeing. Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. I may have to remember June, put that on my calendar.
Yeah. So that means it is what you are seeing and perceiving is actually underlining what is going on with the stars.
That's interesting. Yeah, I get a lot of feedback like that. People like to, on my Patreon page, every now and then I'll have an astrologer be like, "Oh, this really lines up with what this is saying," or we'll point out the differences between what the astrology is saying and what I'm saying, but they usually tend to be pretty similar, which is always interesting. So it's always cool to line things up. It kind of solidifies things and makes me think that maybe I'm not crazy. You know,
Um, so another thing that I have to ask you, I I love predictions. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to tell you you're doing nonsense, but I firmly believe that, when you do a prediction, that is okay, that is what you saw, that is what you perceived. But the timeline sometimes can change so rapidly
Yeah, yeah,
that, it takes another drift. And in that sense, nothing is ever written in stone. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I like to do the monthly predictions before the month because that's more of a short time where I feel like, yes, things shift within a month, absolutely. But like the big things usually are closer to what I'm sensing within a month versus if I do a year, it's kind of like it's a little iffy. If I go out like 5 years and it's just like, who knows? You know?
Mm.
I feel that there are some things that are more baked into the future. Like on a collective level, we've kind of, energetically set ourselves up in a patterning system that just kind of this plus this equals that for the future. And that can shift at any time. But I feel that there are certain things that just feel more baked into the future. Like it's just that's kind of more so likely to happen. And then there's other things that feel like they can fluctuate more and like this is likely to happen, but not as likely, but nothing is 100% likely and everything can change. And so yeah, like for example, I do a lot of crypto predictions. Sometimes they're spot on. But one thing that I noticed, and I'm not trying to get political here, but during the time of the first attempted Trump assassination, from what I was picking up on, there were some massive timeline shifts. So
Mm.
I suspect that on one timeline he was killed, and then that kind of shifted. And what I was seeing with crypto predictions, because I do tons of crypto predictions all the time, because people are just addicted to that stuff. And I get it. They're trying to make some money. But all of the predictions that I made from like years ago, even that were holding up relatively close to what was going on with those coins, they all just started, if they were totally correct, around that time, they just went way off and it was just not reflecting at all what was going on. It was right around that time. And so I've had to kind of go back to all of those coins that were on target with my prediction and redo those predictions. And then I post the old prediction and I say, this is the old prediction, but this was done before I think April or so. I could be off on the month of 2024, where massive timeline shifts happen. And so I feel that that was like more than just a timeline shift because, like what you're saying, the future is never set in stone. And so it's always fluctuating. There may be certain trends that are more likely to happen. Um, and so I feel that I can do predictions like 5 years out because I feel like I can tune into those, but with the understanding that nothing is written in stone and it can change. And I will say one thing, if you go back like a year ago, a lot of the main big movements tend to match with what I'm saying now, but a lot of the details are completely different from what I was saying 10 or not 10 years, I mean 1 year ago with those particular coins, whatever it is. So, there's human error and people like to be like, "Oh, it's the timelines." And like it's both. There's human error, there's the timeline shift and you can blame it on whichever one you want, but it's usually a combination of the two, which is you know close approximations can be off, and things do change. So I absolutely agree.
Yeah. Yeah, with that assassination attempt, I mean, yeah, okay, there are many speculations that this was a fake. and that there was no assassination attempt. But be that as it may, I totally agree that because when I saw those photos and the
It
footage,
was surreal almost, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I looked at it and I thought he just won the election.
yeah. And my sense was that it was kind of like we were on a timeline of chaos and division and absolute just destruction of society because of political division and on some collective consciousness level, subconscious, I should say, spiritual level, like kind of like us in the future reflecting back type of thing that goes beyond our current understanding of ourselves in our lifetime. We collectively decided to not go down that path and kind of shift the timeline.
Yeah.
That's that's my conclusion, my interpretation, at least, of what was going on.
Exactly, because it was so interesting. A lot of people were saying before the election that no matter who wins, n either side, be it the Democrats win, the Republicans win, nobody will accept the outcome, and
Yeah.
the United States will fall into a civil war. And that
Yeah.
and I don't think that they were particularly wrong, but I think they didn't count in this timeline shift.
Yeah, I never really saw Civil War, to be honest. Like
Mm,
that never showed up for me when I tuned into it. I know a lot of other people were saying that, but for some reason I saw a lot of conflict, but that wasn't ever something I try not to speculate too far out into the future either. So maybe that's what it was, but I just that never showed up for me. So I
mm.
don't know.
Yeah, well, they weren't psychics. They were just analyzing the situation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I
Yeah,
know
and
a lot
from
of
that
I have seen
perspective, I
psychics
can
say that.
understand it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I have heard psychics say that and like even remote viewers, certain groups that put out stuff, they've been talking about that a lot. I feel like a lot of it is fear mongering and kind of hype and spin as well, trying to get views sometimes. But yeah, there's a whole nother thing about that, which is I recently heard I can't remember his name. I literally took a class from him for remote viewing just to try it out. But he was recently on a kind of out there channel um, for with Michael Sala interviewing him. But in the interview, he was talking about how he did an experiment with remote viewers, and he has like a whole school. So he has like tons of students that are like high level. I'm not very good at remote viewing in their protocol. I do it differently. But but he would task different people who he knows are relatively accurate. And what he found was that if he would task someone saying, do a remote viewing on the next terrorist attack or something like that, they would come back with information describing bloody guts, explosions, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff, you know? But when he would say, describe the next terrorist attack without influencing the future, they would just describe, in his words, someone riding a horse or something very mundane like that. And this was all done blind, meaning that they don't even know what the tasking is, what the
Mhm.
question, they don't know what they're reading. They're just given a
A number.
digit.
Mm.
Yeah. And so their subconscious mind is able to to know the difference of whether or not they're influencing the future by viewing it. Excuse me.
You want
But
to catch a drink?
oh no, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, okay.
That happens to me sometimes. I'm talking for a little while. But that to me basically shows that there are parallel timelines, or at least that you can kind of manifest things in some way. And I don't necessarily believe that just because someone does a remote viewing on a terrorist attack like that, that's now the future either. I don't believe that either. But it does seem to me that that could indicate that there's kind of creating a possible timeline that we could go down that that would lead to that result.
Mm.
So that's my interpretation. So there is the whole factor of should we be making future predictions in the first place, and that is a concern, but I feel on another level that we're constantly projecting our own views into the future and constantly having expectations anyways. So it's not as if that's the only factor going into it, and there's so many factors going into it all the time that it makes me feel not too guilty about the idea that I could be influencing the future in a negative way. Because just go online and look at what people are posting on YouTube. World War III, blah blah. It's crazy. So, but it's an interesting thing to think about. So I
Yeah.
just thought I'd bring that up because that was fascinating to me and makes me kind of think about things, especially
Mm.
with
Um,
making big negative predictions.
yeah. Do do you ever get something along the lines of World War III when you
um, well, yes and no. I'll say yes because way back in 2020, I was doing a prediction video for the next year of 2021, and I said in that video that the following year, 2022, felt like there would be a war that could break out. And then I proceeded to describe literally Moscow and Ukraine and the United States being in conflict. But I also ironically said that the US would not be directly involved in combat. That's exactly what happened. Um, then the month of, I think it was October, when, what am I trying to say? Hamas invaded Israel. That month, I started out the prediction for it, joking that this was the end of the world and saying it's been nice knowing you, et cetera, and then saying, just kidding, we're going to be fine, but it's going to be rough. And basically, I was saying there's going to be a conflict. It's not going to be Ukraine, but it's going to be like Ukraine. And that happened. So I do get things like that, but and I do in the future see a lot of conflict, especially in the Middle East, and lots of explosions. And I'm not sure if maybe that's already happened because since I've been kind of tuning into that, what was it? Syria, I think,
Mm.
just got wiped out. So it could have been that. But I do feel that there is more to come. From what I was seeing, it seemed pretty big, maybe bigger than just Syria. Um, some people would describe it as World War III. I wouldn't, because I don't particularly see the United States being involved in a hot war. You could call it a Cold War, World War III, and I would not argue with you on that whatsoever. That probably is already happening. But as far as like the United States being in active combat with, you know, Russia and China and all of that happening, I'm not saying it can't happen because, of course, anything's possible. But I don't see that being a major concern. But I do see the first half of 2025 being pretty explosive in a negative sort of way with lots of wars around the Middle East. And it seems like the second half of the year things will kind of tone down. So hopefully that plays out.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I when 2020, when we reached March, I was under the impression that Mickey Mouse. I was under the impression that we are already in World War III. It's
Oh,
not just
yeah.
country against country, it's against all of us. You know what I mean, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like kind of like a Cold War. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
economic war?
but against the entire population of Earth.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like a psyop type of war, and maybe worse than just a psyop, but yeah, I could see that. It does seem that, from my perspective, we've kind of always been in that for a long time, but it's kind of just now more obvious, I guess you could say.
But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, that's all. That's all.
Okay. So when the TV, when the drones have taken a little bit of a backseat now because
Yeah.
of the fire, yeah.
Yeah.
Wha- Do you think there is any connection?
So, you know, I don't know everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately, I wish I did. That's one of the things that I'm not too sure about, to be honest.
Mhm.
Now, I did do a little tuning into the fires. It was a little bit inconclusive. I did see homeless people being involved. I did see the way that it came through to me was kind of like this punk rock kind of environmentalist type of mindset. That's also like, like screw the man, kind of like anti-authority, anti-establishment, which on some level that's how I grew up. I was kind of that punk rock kid myself growing up. So I totally get it, totally understand that type of mentality. But it was to the point where it was like, screw these people, screw society, like screw civilization, like the humans are corrupt, humans are evil type of projection
Hmm.
onto society. And I was viewing it as that type of energy taking a hold from some different people. One woman was showing up in particular, and this could be the woman that was caught. I don't know if it was her or not, but there was a woman showing up who seemed to be kind of bringing in other people into this mindset, kind of ushering people into this kind of movement, if you want to call it a movement. But above her, I saw a politician woman also that was enabling it, but not directly calling for the actions, but more so just enabling the actions, and
Hmm.
kind of just allowing it to happen because of this kind of idea. It was, basically environmentalist, which I support. I support environmentalism, but it was in a way that was kind of like so politically charged, so like against the establishment that it didn't really care about the consequences, if that makes sense. I kind of get further out there on my Patreon about how that's connected to I don't want to say it, but like it's I have to explain a lot if I say it, but like Illuminati type stuff. But when I say that, I don't mean in the way that people think, because from my perspective, the Illuminati is more of a concept and an organization. And it was created in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt. And you can look that up on Wikipedia.
Mhm.
This is not, this is public knowledge.
I am
Um,
German.
what's that?
I am German. I know.
Oh, okay. So you know about this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So yeah, it started out, and like a lot of the stuff that it was about was actually about democratic revolutions and taking down the authority. And I believe there's a lot of positivity from it mixed with negativity. And just like any movement, any political ideology, it's going to have a little bit of positive and a little bit of negative. And I think it's kind of like a thought process that kind of took form. And so when I say that this person was influenced by that, it's more of an intellectual movement than it is like being part of a organization that's like calling up and saying, execute plan A.
Yeah.
Although I think that it kind of bleeds into, there's a little bit of overlap on some level. Just like there's, organizations for all types of different spiritual beliefs, and there are going to be organizations that call themselves a certain thing that resonates with that. And I do believe there are organizations that identify as being part of Illuminati lineage or whatever, but for the most part, it's kind of just it's not really the same thing, in my opinion, and it's not as organized as a lot of the conspiracy theories like to project, as there's this one guy at the top controlling the whole world. And I think it's much more complicated than that. And there are many organizations battling each other constantly, kind of like our government.
Yeah.
There's two sides, and then within those two sides, there's a bunch of people fighting each other for the positions, and within that, there's a bunch of fighting of different interests, different lobbyists trying to put money here or there. They're all fighting. Somehow they all come together with one agenda, but that one agenda is created by many different agendas, if that makes sense, from
Yeah.
different individuals.
Yeah.
That's kind of
And
my perception on
yeah.
it.
And there is also infighting among those groups.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who
Yeah.
is
So,
going to be the
yeah.
big honcho and and which way to go and which way not to go. It's not all yeah, unicorns and rainbows. No, no.
Yeah. And a lot of it's not as bad as people think. I think some people, you know, there is a movement to depopulate the planet, but a lot of those people are coming from the idea that that could be beneficial for humanity. You know, some
But
of
that is
them
total
may
nonsense
not,
because
but
it is nonsense because the real problem is that we are going to have a population collapse. We are not overpopulated. That's a fact. And
yeah, yeah,
the birth rates are really dropping dramatically, and the much bigger problem will be a collapse of the population, not the
yeah.
overpopulation. That
I think, sorry, go ahead.
plus you cannot put yourself in a position where you think you can decide who lives and dies. That is
Right,
like claiming to be God.
right, totally. Yeah. Yeah, but from a lot of people's perspective, they feel that they're doing good. And I think a lot of it is philosophical too. A lot of, a lot of what is happening as far as corruption, I think, is just people getting into their own thoughts and their own philosophy about how things should be. And it's not, some people I think are doing very dark things, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, and a lot of what people are projecting as that, is just people with philosophies that aren't necessarily correct and don't necessarily make sense. Just like there's different religions, you know. Some people are going to say abortions are good, some people are going to say abortions are bad. It just depends on your philosophical, religious stance on that. Um,
I find it pathetic that in the 21st century, when we have all these measures to prevent an unwanted pregnancy, that we are still talking about this.
yeah, I feel it's definitely it's a religious thing. It's not. It doesn't make much sense to put so much emphasis on that from my perspective. Although, you know, some people who are very Christian, you know, I have a sister and she's like, abortion is evil, you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with her. I totally agree with her. Yeah. And I'm not a Christian.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a nuanced perspective on it. I'm like, you know, I don't have much of a strong opinion on it.
Mm. Yeah,
You know.
the deliberate destruction of life, I'm sorry, that is evil to me.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand that. I just, you know, if somebody in some situation feels they want to do that, I'm not gonna fight them on it. But it depends on the situation, I suppose. But you know, that's just a philosophical
Yeah.
perspective. I don't
Yeah.
think it really. I think that's just kind of like I don't know. It's nuanced. I feel it's more complex than a yes or no answer. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. So, what else do you think will be maybe different in a couple of years? Do you think that the political systems as we know them now, that that will survive? Because I have a strong feeling even there that a lot of it will crumble away.
I think a lot of it will crumble away, but I don't see like everything like the United States crumbling and just disappearing. What I see is things crumbling away while things are growing. So it's like kind of like a transition. So it's not so much that the system just is completely decimated. It's just that one aspect of it is transformed, and then the next aspect is transformed, and then the next aspect is transformed
Yeah.
until it's a whole new system. But it's kind of the same system in a way, but it's a slow shifting. It's not like an abrupt like end and then renew
So,
something brand new. It's just a shift.
so not in
And
the sense of a overnight collapse
no,
and hmm,
but I do see there could be some collapse. I was seeing around 2030, 2033 or so. There could definitely be some major collapses of major corporations like Microsoft and you know those big companies. That's what I was definitely seeing. And 2038 looks like it could potentially, again, I'm not trying to program this into the future and create a negative outcome, but 2038 is there's something going on with that year. It shows up all the time on crypto coins. And it's funny because some crypto coins just crash and other crypto coins seem to go up that year. It's just there's something about that year. And it seems like there could be some sort of worldwide situation. Um, it's possible it could involve the desert. What is the right word? desert desertification, if that's a word. Basically, the things turning into more of like a desert type of situation where plants aren't really growing too well, and the weather just gets really bad. That's what I was seeing around 2038, and humanity really struggling. Of course, we could always shift this, and you know, that's not necessarily the case, but that's something that showed up for me around that time period. So there could be a collapse around 2038 potentially. That would be more like what you're talking about. That's further out, but that is more what you're talking about, where there could be a lot of death potentially.
Hmm.
Um, so
So,
hopefully that's not the case.
yeah, okay. Yeah, well, as I said, we can shift the timeline.
Yeah, true. And I think the more that we're aware of these potential outcomes, and the more that we're aware that we can shift them, um, I think that can help
Yeah.
in creating the intention. Just you can kind of just heal our present timeline just with
Mm,
the intention. If you want, if you focus in on it, I feel
yeah.
that that can shift things if enough people do it.
So with Israel and Hamas now agreeing to a ceasefire,
Yeah, I did hear
um,
about that.
yeah, it's in place starting Saturday or Sunday. Um, do you think, what is your feeling? Will that hold?
Well, I haven't really tuned into it since hearing that, but previously I had seen that it's not that I don't really see things ending. From from what I'm seeing now, just as I'm tuning into it right now, it seems like that could hold for a little bit, but it seems like it's gonna slowly pick back up again. I'm sorry, who was that between Israel and what organization?
Hamas.
Hamas themselves. Okay. Yeah. Um, it's possible that slowly over time they get back at it. It's also possible that there could be other organizations or just terrorist attacks that are not associated with Hamas. But I do get the sense that there could be more explosions. It does seem to come back from what I'm sensing.
Hmm. Hmm.
I do see Israel winning. I've said that from the beginning, though, that Israel will win, but there could be some damage to Israel along the way.
Yeah, it already has.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like there could be a little bit more.
Have you
Give it
ever,
a month or so, and maybe there could be some more. Is kind of the sense that I get.
uh, have you ever had a moment where you thought, oh my goodness, I was completely wrong about this?
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
That happened. Absolutely. And it's a big red flag when people say that that doesn't happen. Like the greatest psychics. I think it was Sylvia something. I can't remember. I don't know. There's some like super popular psychic that was on TV way back. Um, I think in the 90s or something like that. And someone came up and said her daughter had been abducted. And she told her that her daughter had been killed. This woman then committed suicide under the understanding that her daughter was dead. And a month later, her daughter was released from a hostage situation to find that her mother had committed suicide, believing that she was dead. So like, yeah, you should never assume that anyone is 100% correct.
Mm.
um, so no, I'm not 100% correct. And all of the greatest psychics out there have definitely made predictions that did not come true, whether that be due to the timeline shifting, which is a great excuse. It is a thing that happens, but it also is a great excuse for being wrong.
Mm.
But even without the timeline shifting as an excuse, I still believe that no psychic is 100% correct. I mean, even just with people in their day-to-day life, people you can look over and like, call someone by the wrong name, or think someone different is standing behind you than you thought, or think you're alone in a room and realize you're not. People have misinterpretations of what's going on all the time in their day-to-day life. So why wouldn't that happen on a psychic level too?
Mm.
Of course it happens. So yeah.
Yeah. And are you willing to share one experience where you thought, oh my goodness, I missed that one?
Yeah, sure. The most recent one was with Bitcoin.
Hmm.
um, I guess in this case, I will have the excuse of the timeline, but I'll explain what happened. For November, I was saying Bitcoin was going to crash, right?
Hmm.
I was like 6 months before that, I was like, Bitcoin, there's something about November 2024. I didn't even connect up that it was the election. This was just what came up when I was reading crypto coins. I was like, November, there's going to be some sort of something big happens, like it's going to go way up. And then after that, I was like, no, it looks like it's going to come way down. And then I was like confused. And later on, I was like, okay, it looks like it's going to go up and then it's going to come down even harder. And then I put that information out like 6 months before the fact. After that, there were tons of people starting to say the same thing, that November is going to crash. Even future forecasting group, the Dick Algar remote viewers, and all of them, they all had collaborating data, and it all lined up. Every single one of them said the same thing. It's going to crash hard in November. And I was like, it's going to crash hard in November. See, everybody's saying the same. It didn't. It did the opposite. So I was wrong there. And for some reason, all these other people were saying the same thing too, which makes me think maybe there was a timeline shift, and maybe at one point it was going to crash, but now it's like more of like a slow kind of, instead of coming down all at once, it's just going to slowly kind of trickle off. That's kind of where I'm at now with it. But that was a time where I was just dead wrong. It especially happens with crypto predictions where I do hundreds and hundreds of crypto predictions, you know, different coins. I've had people say that with that I'm about 80% accurate with everything that I say. Like, this coin's going to do this, and it's going to do that, and it's going to do this. 8 out of 10 times is what their opinion of viewing what I've done with that is, which I wouldn't expect it to be 100%, especially with the future being not totally set in stone all the time too, but also with human error as well. So yeah, I'm definitely wrong about things. Usually when I'm doing a one-on-one reading with a client, I feel that I'm more accurate with that
Hmm.
because, well, first of all, it's not like looking at something on a chart moving up and down, which is kind of challenging to read in the first place. But
Hmm.
there's more of a energetic connection there.
Yeah.
And even then I can be wrong on things. Sometimes I'll be like, yeah, it looks like so sometimes I get genders mixed up. Sometimes I think I'm reading a man and it's actually a woman. That happens. So
But when you do readings one on one, then you know if it's a man or a woman.
Oh yeah, but I mean like when I'm reading people, other people will show up in the reading and it'll be like there's a man showing up
Ah, okay.
or there's a woman showing up and this person is like this. There's something going on there between you and this other person. So other people will show up in the reading. And sometimes those genders can get mixed up. But then there's the factor of sometimes there's a feminine man or a masculine woman. So I'm just kind of reading the energy. Sometimes I
Mm.
don't. Sometimes it may be a masculine woman and I read it as a man, but it's actually a woman. Um, Trying to think of another time I was wrong. I mean, honestly, the only the only time I've ever had someone be like, I don't want to do this anymore, you're wrong, was the second rating I ever gave, which was almost devastating. But but I kept going, and ever since then, everyone's been happy since then. But I was just kind of describing things too much in an energetic way because it's kind of where I was at that point in time. Um, and she wanted direct answers to what was going to happen in her court case.
Mm.
And I was kind of just describing the energy and describing things, and she was just like, "This." She was just like, "That's not me at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Like this just isn't working out." That was the second reading I gave, so I don't know if I was on or off, or I just wasn't giving her the direct answer that she wanted. But that was a time that was, that was that was the most devastating reading I gave, where she just was like, "Can I get a refund?" And I was like, "Sure." Let's just stop now and I'll refund you. This is painful for both of us. So
Yeah, okay. Since Trump took office, I mean, a lot of people are putting so much hope into this new administration. Have you ever felt into that? Do you think he is really going to clean house and because
Um,
in his first term, you know, draining the swamp and what have you, nothing really happened.
yeah, yeah, not really. Um, the sense that I get, actually, I said this in my last monthly prediction video for January. I said that January he's going to make a lot of promises, and we're seeing that playing out. He's been making a lot of promises. I think recently he made the promise that he's going to release the information about what's happening with the drones. But what I got was that it's going to be kind of half-assed. Like, yes, there will be information released, but it's not going to be like all of the information,
Yeah.
or it might be like the public version of the declassified document. So, yes, I do see there being some positivity there, but it's not going to be like the whole thing. It's
A
just going to be
watered
kind of
down version
sneaky.
for public consumption.
Yeah, yeah. And I think some of I never really asked if that's his choice, but when I tune into it, I kind of get the sense that that is his choice, actually. That he doesn't, that it's not entirely his idea to not release all the information, but after he's been talked to enough, it seems as though he's in agreement that for business, practical purposes, some of the information should be withheld, is what I'm getting.
Hmm.
He's a businessman after all.
Yeah, okay. So when you say for business purposes, is that let's not crash the stock market or what exactly are you getting there?
It's a good question. I don't really. Sometimes I say things I don't know why. So let me tune in and see. Um, Business as in the military industrial complex.
Okay.
Um, That's a business in some sense of the word. And I'm getting strategy involving financial as well as information um, being leaked. And is this might be involving the public domain, the public perception? Let me see just a quick second here. Yeah, it's not so much about controlling the public opinion as it is that the public opinion influences business, influences what happens to corporations, such as corporations involved in weapons production, I think, or similar things to that, if not that in particular. But I think weapons productions and um, also just people who are invested in the military in different ways, corporations that work for the military. So that's what I'm picking up on for that.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you think you also said something we will be collectively come to terms with the fact that we are not alone, that there are ETs or EDs, however you want to phrase that, and it will become public knowledge.
I do believe so. I mean, I feel like we're kind of in the process of that right now. I mean, just look back like 10 years ago, people would say you're crazy for saying you saw a UFO, and I know because I was that person saying that I saw a UFO 10 years ago. And now people actually listen when you say that. Some people, not all, but a lot more people listen when you say something like that. And from what I've seen when I tune into it is this is all kind of part of the same timeline that I was describing with things being released and kind of the shift in society and us kind of being in like a new world or like some people I've heard astrologers actually describe 2027 as the golden age and I was like that resonates with me pretty well, the golden age on some level, don't take it too far. It's not like everything's perfect or anything.
Mm.
But it's like a reset, and I don't mean in the political way. I mean in a grassroots kind of way. But from what I've been seeing, it seems like leading up to around 2027, we're going to have a lot more awareness on these things. I think just like everything in life, there's going to be the religious, philosophical disagreements. Some people and conspiratorial perspectives, where they're like, it's all a lie, things like that. There's going to be people saying all sorts of things, but overall, I believe that most people will believe that there are ETs by 2027 or around there. I'm not trying to be specifically that year necessarily, but that seems to be the year that resonates the most with it. Like we've been saying, nothing is fully set in stone, but and then there will be some naysayers, but by 2030, it seems to me that there will not be any more naysayers at all. And moving on from there, around like 2050 or so. And, I've been saying this for a while, but recently I've been hearing the guy who channels Bashar saying the same thing that 2050 is going to be the end of this cycle. And I think he was also saying around 2027 would be when people would be there'd be some sort of mass event where people agree that aliens are real. I don't know if there's going to be a mass event. I just kind of pick up that it's more like a slow progression of getting there. But however that plays out, we have similar viewpoints, and I've found it interesting that he was saying 2050 is the end of this cycle of this shift that I've also been describing. And for me, what I see at 2050 is a likelihood of being intergalactic,
Hmm.
and kind of like what Elon Musk is kind of trying to do, like flying around on different planets, but with ETs. And I know this sounds crazy, and I almost don't even want to say it because, what if I'm wrong, But regardless, that's what I've been seeing. So,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
2050, I will no longer be around. So,
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, who knows what could happen? Maybe I won't. Who knows? I don't know. But you know, that's kind of where this seems to be moving in the scheme of things, regardless.
mm. So from what I understand is it will be a rocky ride that is ahead of us,
The next
but
2 years.
the next 2 years.
Well, this year and 2026 are the rocket years.
Okay, but it will.
2027 too, but it's going to be like things are kind of like coming to fruition at the same time. So it's going to be kind of rocky but rewarding. Whereas 2025 is just going to be rocky.
Mhm.
2026 is going to be rocky and rewarding. And 2027 is going to be more rewarding, but there will still be some rockiness and adjusting.
Mhm. But that sounds as if there is no reason to despair.
Well, it depends what you mean by that. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the person, of course, but some people have such a negative outlook and are really, really depressed. And some people might even think it's best to take my own life.
mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
And right now, I see this push-pull effect. Um, we have positive developments, and then there comes, a couple of weeks where you think, oh, now it's again going completely in the wrong direction. And
nuclear bombs or whatever.
yeah,
Is that what
yeah.
you mean?
So some people might have the feeling nothing will really ever change here, and it's hopeless. But when I'm listening to you, it will not be a rose garden, but the push-pull effect will eventually balance out, and it's not the time to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
I view it as two steps forward, one step back, two forward, one back, and we're making progress. That's the way that I view it.
Hmm.
And it's a lot like, I'm teaching a psychic development meditation course right now, and what I keep telling people is it doesn't feel like you're making progress when you're making progress because it's such a slow thing. But after doing it for a month and you look back a month ago, you're going to be like, wow, I was a different person back then. But while it's happening, it doesn't feel like anything's happening. And I
Hmm.
think that's kind of the case of what's going on. I mean, if you think about who you were in 2019, you probably changed a lot. I mean, that, of course, everybody changes over time, anyways, but I feel that the amount that people are changing within a certain period of time is increasing.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, um, I think there's going to be hardship, but it's going to be I don't want to say it's necessary hardship because on one level it's not necessary, but where people are at The universe is meeting us where we're at. And from that context, this hardship is necessary because of where we're at. But if we change where we're at, I think that things would flow much more easily. But it's complicated because on some level people want conflict. From a spiritual perspective, some people need that as part of their development as well. So it's hard to say everything's necessarily good or bad. Even bad things are good. Sometimes the most tragic thing that happens to you, or you think it's tragic, but then when you look back, it's like the most transformative thing that happened to you. And some people they die, literally die, and then they
Mhm.
meet God, and then they come back and they have this amazing near-death story. It was a horrible, tragic event. They literally died for a moment, but
Mhm.
it changed their life.
Yeah.
And that's transforming energy. That's clearing energy, at its finest right there.
Mhm.
And so sometimes that's what it takes, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So I feel that that's partly what's going on. And then part of it is that we have soul contracts to have hardship in our life. And from a philosophical perspective, I view this, you know, I think of it as like skateboarding. When you're skateboarding first of all, a skateboard's hard to stand on. You know, like if it didn't have wheels and it wasn't challenging to stand on, it would be pretty boring. But you put wheels on it, and now it's like this is challenging to even stand on. That's where the fun comes from. Then you put like a jump, makes it even more dangerous. Now you're flying into the air with this thing, and you're gonna injure yourself and fall down if you don't do it right. And then you have more things to jump over. You're putting blocks in your way. You're intentionally like, I'm going to put a blockage in my pathway
Mhm.
and make it harder for myself and see if I can do it. And that's kind of the challenge. And from a spiritual perspective, I view that a lot of challenges are put in place for our personal growth, just like I think psychologists say this. Maybe it's not psychologists, but people say that is it stress that builds character? Something like that, like or challenge builds character. I don't. I think they said something like that. But anyways, hardship builds character.
Yeah, good times make weak men, and weak men create horrible times.
Yeah. So on some level, we came here incarnated into this body. This is my opinion. In order to experience hardship.
Mm.
For example, my um, father passed away a couple months ago, or last month, something like that. Either last month or the month before. But he, from what I gather, he had a spiritual contract to do so, you know,
Hmm.
and it was something his spirit wanted to do, even though in body he was suffering. And I was talking to him, and he was saying, "I don't understand why this is happening. I've been super healthy. Like, why is this happening?
Mm.
But but on a spiritual level, there's a growth to be had, and sometimes acceptance is that growth, acceptance of these horrible things and learning to move past it. So it's complicated. There's a million conflicting thoughts in my head about this. It's like, yeah, it sucks, it's bad, but maybe it's good. I don't know. Depends how you look at it, I guess. So
Mm. Yeah. So, Tai, hey,
you keep kind of going, you disappear every now and then.
yeah,
I just
yeah, yeah,
hope
yeah.
that you come back.
That,
Okay.
that is when she's blocking the camera.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I like cats.
Yeah. So, Ty, I thank you so much for coming on. I would like to talk to you again, maybe if half of the year is gone and we have seen a little bit of the Uranus um,
Yeah, that could be
energy.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, could do
yeah.
that.
And yeah, then it will be very interesting what you are getting. So
Yeah, for sure.
tell people where they can find you.
Oh yeah, so just go to YouTube and type Psychic Tai. That's my name is spelled Tai, and yes, that is my real name. Tai Psychic Tai. You can find me on YouTube. I have a website, psychictai.com. If you want to book a reading with me, you can do it there. I also have a Patreon page, and you can find that on my YouTube channel. So
Mhm. Okay. So yeah, guys, that was it. Night flight for today with Tai Spring. And we see you on the next one. Bye bye.
thank you, Jude.